dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent, right? So this is where the equation of serpent and Satan comes. Okay? It doesn't say that very much else in Scripture, but it says it here in Revelation. And he places this, the first thing that God does, right? He doesn't look at Adam, he doesn't look at Eve, he looks at the serpent. And then what does he study the serpent? See, this is the heart of God. Okay, this is what I want you guys to catch. This is the heart of God. He says to the serpent, one day, the seed of the woman is going to come, and that seed, you're going to bite his heel, but he's going to crush your head. This is the very first mention of the redemption promise, right? In the midst of human mess, human stupidity, you've been there, I've been there, okay? Just dumbness. Bad choices in life, right? What is God's response to us? It's not, what the heck is wrong with you? Didn't I tell you? You know, they say when you're raising kids, that's the one phrase you shouldn't say to your kids. I told you! And they say that it builds like this angst in children. It builds bitterness. I told you! It tells them, it fortifies in their brain that they're stupid. Right? God doesn't say that. He looks directly at the serpent and says, you know what? One day, I will send my son, and you will bite his heel, but he will crush your head. Right? This is the redemption promise that carries the entire Bible. This is where it's founded in. Everything is focused on this verse and this promise to this devil, serpent, Satan, right? And then he goes and he does this beautiful thing. He sacrifices an animal, skins the animal, and then he clothes Adam and Eve to hide their shame, to help cover their shame, right? This is God's heart. See, it's a very different, most of the time people read the Old Testament, they're like, oh, hellstone and brimfire, God will judge, kill, kill, kill. I love the Old Testament. I'm actually considering a PhD in Old Testament Genesis with this professor named Ellen Davis at Duke. Right? I love the Old Testament. Why? Because that's where the love of God comes to me. Well, New Testament, I know you love New Testament. New Testament is law. It's the reverse for me. It's like, do this. Pauline theology, right? Old Testament is just, oh, God, you're so good. Right? So he clothes them. And then the woman he says to the woman, your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. Okay, so this is where the translation thing gets a little funky. Sometimes it's translated, her desire shall be for you, like she will desire after you, and you'll just crush her. Another translation reads, her desire shall be against you. It is woman and man colliding. Let me tell you, the world you live in right now, women and men are colliding. Is women, men, fighting back and forth. And you'll see all throughout Genesis that the women actually rise up quite a bit. It's Sarah who convinces Abraham to take Hagar as a wife. It's Jacob's wives that just drive him crazy and they're worshiping idols, right? So you constantly see this battle between man and woman. Just this, right? And it says that man will dominate you. Why? Because men are physically stronger, right? I heard this great thing. It says that they walked into a room of women and asked, they walked into a room of men and asked, what is your greatest fear? And they said that I would be embarrassed, that I would be shamed in front of everybody, right? And they walk into a room of women and they said, what is your greatest fear regarding your husband or your partner? And the women said that he would kill me. It's a very different kind of fear that we live with, right? Men can physically dominate women and really hurt us. And women, we can manipulate men and hurt them mentally and emotionally, right? And all of this is beginning to happen. Why? Because I'm beginning to reflect myself. I gotta protect myself. I gotta defend myself. I gotta assert my right? And then he says to Adam, because you listen to the voice of your wife, and then God doesn't curse Adam and Eve. What does God curse? He curses the ground. You're like, what in the world? And this is the repercussion of our choices. What happens? We destroy our world. Honestly. Look at our seas. I seriously, I'm not a tree hugger, okay? But I look at creation and I think we have just destroyed the beauty of what God created. Why? Because we need the oil. We got to rape the earth, right? We gotta catch fish to eat. So then we just completely wipe out an entire species of tuna, right? This is what's happening in the Japanese ocean because all of us love sushi so much, right? You know the reason why that whale had that rope tied around was because it was part of a net that was catching fish, and the whale got caught in it. They just found recently a new rabbit, didn't even know existed in China. Right? It's the cutest little thing, and it's almost extinct. Why? Because humans keep asserting and taking without reflecting. Right? This is the consumerism of your age and my age. Just buy and buy more and more. More clothes, more shoes, more computers, without ever reflecting God. This is the gift of what we've been given. We multiply. And if it's good, we'll multiply, and if it's bad, we'll even multiply that even more. Right? Cursed is the ground because of what you've chosen. Right? I hope I'm laying something heavy on your heart to let you know you and I have an incredible gift in our choices. Right? So he drives them out of the garden. Right? So what do you start seeing when Adam is driven out of the garden? Separation from God. You'll see that even more as you progress. Ooh, it became dark. And there was light. Yes. So let's see. We've been given this image of God. We've also been given the gift of multiplication. And let's look at the life of Cain and Abel. Because you'll see the growth of sin. The multiplication of human selfish choices. Okay? Where Adam sins against God, Cain sins against his brother, right? Adam hides from God, and Cain lies to God. At least Adam didn't lie to God, right? So you'll see the multiplication of sin. So Cain and Abel, they're giving sacrifice. Now, some people say Abel's sacrifice was better because it was blood sacrifice, and Cain's was vegetables. Some say Cain gave a better sacrifice. He gave the first fruits of his Abel, and Cain gave the leftovers. Who knows? Okay, that's called, technical term. That's called argument in silence. Nobody knows because the text doesn't say. We just know that Cain's was acceptable, and it was an interior condition, and Abel's wasn't. The point is that it says God comes to Cain and says, Cain, why are you angry? He doesn't say, don't be angry. He says, why are you angry? Anger is not a sin, okay? It's what we do with anger that becomes sin, right? It's our choice, remember, choice. With what we do with anger that becomes sin, but anger itself isn't. It's an emotion. It shows something that's going on, right? He says, Cain, reflect. Why are you angry? All right? And God says, sin is crouched at your door. What a great image, right? Sin is just sitting right at your door. And what is the thing that opens the door? Your choice. Your choices. This is why I say choice is such an incredible gift. What you choose every day, the little things. How you choose to smile at someone or to frown at someone, right? These choices are powerful, right? And so the door opens. And Cain chooses to take his brother out in the field. Some versions have that verse, some versions don't. But I think he took him out into a field. And where does he do there? First recorded act of murder. I'm going to impose my will on you, physically and violently. I don't like you, you're better than me. I'm going to impose myself on you, and I will take your life. And there's something very mysterious about blood. Have you guys ever seen a lot of blood? Yeah, I've unfortunately seen a lot of blood. There's something very mysterious about blood. And it says here that the blood of Abel cries out to God for what? Justice. I was made in your image, and that life was taken away not by you, but by another person. Someone else imposed their will and their right on me and took my life and my right to live and to reflect you. The blood cried out to God, right? And so then God comes to Cain and says, Cain, where's your brother? See, this is God asking questions again, right? Where's your brother? Cain's like, I don't know. And he asks this very important question. Am I my brother's keeper? What is the answer? Yes. You are king and priest. You are the image and the reflection of God to one another. You are your brother's keeper. You keep your brother. Do the things that benefit them for their well-being, right? You are your brother's keeper. And Cain says, I am not. I am not my brother's keeper, right? And so then what happens? The ground gets cursed again. This time he says, thorns and thistles will come out from the ground. Remember, Cain is a farmer. And when thorns and thistles are coming out of the ground, it's a sign of curse, right? It's the curse of human choices. Why do you think Jesus wore a crown of thorns on his brow? It's the repercussion of all the wicked human choices in the world, right? That brought curse, not just to yourself, but to your world, right? And Adam is pushed out of the garden, and then Cain is even pushed even farther. It says that he goes east of Eden, right? Even farther from God. That's why as you progress through Genesis, what will you notice? You'll notice that God talks less and less. God's voice is less and less. That's why when YWAM teaches you to hear the voice of God, that is a revolutionary thing, that you can now hear the voice of God again. Because the voice of God is dying. Because people don't want to hear anymore, right? And the fact that YWAM teaches you here, that's amazing. Sometimes we don't hear right, but that's okay. And so then it says Cain has children. Now the main question people always ask is, who was Cain marrying if they were the first people created? Okay, the answer is, I have no idea, okay? There are many theories out there. Theologians can't figure this out. Maybe God created other people. It just says Adam and Eve were the first people. Maybe Adam and Eve procreated and had a lot of kids, because that's exactly what the genealogy in 5 says, chapter 5. Whatever the case, okay? Those are unanswerable questions that I cannot tell you because it's argument in silence. Text doesn't say. So he goes out and he has kids. Very interesting, okay? Very interesting person. Let's look at chapter 4. Okay, let's, chapter 4, verse 17. Aaron, can you read that for us? Oh, I just noticed your script is Hebrew script. Oh, do you know this? Do you know Leonard Nimoy? He always does this. Live long and prosper. Star Trek. Do you know what this is a symbol of? It is a symbol of the Hebrew letter Shin. Yeah, it's actually used in the name of God. It's also used in the word Shalom. All right, live long and prosper. It's a Hebrew letter. He was Jew. Anyway, a little tidbit.
Where are we?
Chapter 4, verse 17, all the way to 24. The
He
left.
had sexual relations with his wife, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Enoch. Then Cain founded a city, which he named Enoch after his son. Enoch had a son named Irad. Irad became the father of Mehujael.
Good job.
Mehujael became the father of Methushael.
Good job.
Methushael became the father of Lamech.
Yes.
Lamech married 2 women. The first was named Ada, and the second was Zillah. Ada gave birth to Jabal, who was the first of those who raised livestock and lived in tents. His brother's name was Jubal, the first of all who played the harp and flute. Lamech's other wife, Zillah, gave birth to a son named Tubal-Cain. He became an expert in forging tools of bronze and iron. Tubal-Cain had a sister named Naamah. One day Lamech said to his wives, keep going?
Keep going.
Okay.
All the way to 24.
Zillah, hear my voice. Listen to me. You wives of Lamech, I have killed a man who attacked me, a young man who wounded me. If someone kills Cain is punished 7 times, then the one who kills me will be punished 77 times.
Let's look at this. Really fascinating guy, Lamech. Okay? He says, remember, he is a descendant of Cain. Genealogies are very, very important, okay? He is the son of Cain. He is actually the seventh son of, so seventh in line, okay? I actually have a chart. If I would start using my PowerPoint, you guys can actually see these things. Look at all the stuff I passed. I'm so sorry. Oh, dang it, I don't have a chart, my bad. We'll get to this verse. So Cain has son, it gives you the genealogy, right? Son of Mephishael, right? Seventh son is this guy named Lamech. Lamech has sons, and one of his sons, Jubal, great name, right? Jubilee. Jubal is the forger of instruments. So he's the first person to start making musical instruments. It's probably like some kind of a harp. And then Lamech, he goes out, and the word for a young man here is actually the Hebrew word yeled. Yeled is actually, it means small child, a young boy. Yeled. And he goes out, and this young boy had struck him, and what does Lamech do? Just for striking him, he kills the boy. Lamech is also the first recorded instance of bigamy, first person with two wives, right? So then what does he do after he kills the young boy? He takes the instruments that his son Jubal has made, and then he writes a song. What you see right here is an actual song. I don't know how the song goes. I wish I could sing it for you, but it's so long ago, the melody has been lost. And he says, Ada and Zillah, he calls both his wives. He says, "You wives of Lamech, listen to me. I killed a young boy for wounding me, a young man for striking me. If Cain's revenge is sevenfold, mine will be 77-fold. And what does he begin to do? He begins to glorify. Write songs about his dehumanized condition. Right? Boasting in his bigotry, boasting in his revenge. These are all his choices. None of these things happen without somebody's choice. Right? See, do you see the continual movement of dehumanization? No more in the image of God, but in the image of me. So then with that, we get to a very, very interesting, this is actually one of my favorite verses in Genesis. And it's going to be a little surprising at first, but let me explain why. I'm going to read it to you from my version, okay? It says, chapter 5, verse 1. This is the book of the generations of Adam. Toledot Adama, right? When God created man, he made him in the, say it everybody? Yes, the image and likeness of God. Male and female he created them, and he blessed them and named them man when they were created. When Adam had lived 130 years, he fathered a son in his own likeness after his image and named him Seth. The days of Adam after he fathered Seth were 800 years. He had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days that Adam lived were 930 years. What does that verse tell you? When man was first created, they were created in the image of God. Adam had many more children, and they were created in the image of Adam. This is the kind of sadness, right? That's why when you get to, I just showed you a picture of the Nephilim. Romans 5. Therefore, just as sin came into the world through one man, Adam, and death through sin, so death spread to all men because all sinned. And that's why in 1 Corinthians 15, what does Paul call Jesus? He calls him the second Adam or the last Adam. Because what does Jesus do? It's not some supernatural, of course it's supernatural, but it's not just a supernatural thing Jesus is doing. He is recreating humans in the image of God. When you look at Jesus, what do you see? The image of God. And what did he live? Kindness, forgiveness, justice, right? Inclusion of the weak and the marginalized, right? Reflecting God. Not my will, but yours be done. right? And what does Jesus teach? How to be human again. How to be king and priest, to reflect God and to reflect God back to reflect creation back to God, right? This is why this verse in chapter 5 is a very sad verse. We are now made in the image of Adam, selfish, self-centered, self-defensive, right? Insecure, shame, and recreated into the image of Jesus, right? We are forgiven, accepted, unified, where there was division, right? It's a very, do you see how the Bible just kind of works together? Because you have to remember, Paul was a Pharisee, which meant he had memorized the entire Pentateuch. Okay, I don't mean verses, I mean the whole thing. Okay, there were some stories of rabbis that if he could put, I forget his name, Rabbi Ben something, and if you put his finger on a part of scripture, he could tell you every single word that went straight down. That's how much he had memorized backwards and forwards, right? So the fact that you guys read the Bible once, I challenge you. Read it as many times as you guys are alive. If you're 17, read it 17 times. If you're 40, okay, I'm a little bit behind. I have to read it probably another 15 more times to catch up. My mom actually read it probably more than her years. My mom was 72 when she passed. Memorize it. Love it. Right? That's what David says. Psalm 119. Oh, how I love your law. It is your meditation all the day. All the day it is my meditation. Yes. Sorry, I kept you waiting.
No, it's okay. So, you bring up the point of God created man in his image, and then man created Seth, or Adam created Seth in his image. What other image would he have created them in than his own? And why would that have been wrong for him to have created his son in his image, just like God had created?
You know, if the language wasn't written the way it is, I could totally see your point, right? If it was, and Adam had children, and they all looked like him, or they all acted like him. But to use these specific words, image and likeness, which was directly attributed to God's command in Genesis 1, it's a purposeful parallel. Now you could disagree with me, right? But it's a definite purposeful parallel that Moses is making, saying that once we were the image of God, and now we're slaves. What are we? We're the image of man. Adam from Adamah, we're, no longer carrying the image of God. So just for the linguistics, I would have to strongly say that it really is kind of a reflection of saying man is no longer what we should be. Humans are no longer, we are living in a world that is not what it should be, is basically it. You can look at the injustices of the world and you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you come from China, if you come from Taiwan, Myanmar, you definitely know the injustices of the world, You guys want to hear some stories? Right there. Stories of injustice. World is not the way it should be. But now I'm teaching you Job, so we will save that for Friday. We are running out of time again, and I'm a little bit behind. So what I'm going to do, I really wanted to go over the Nephilim with you guys right now. Wait, are we in hour 2 or hour 1? Hour 3. We're in hour 2, and I get until 12 o'clock? 12 o'clock? Okay, how about if I just plow through until 12? You guys okay? Yeah. Okay. Tell me, if you guys are tired, please feel free to get up and take a walk, but only for 2 minutes. Okay? I don't want you to stay out there too long and fall asleep or something. So the importance of Toledot. Okay? This is a question I'm going to pose to you. Okay? What Toledot, whatever, however you pronounce it, are you creating? What generations are you creating? What legacy are you leaving? Because your choices will definitely have repercussions. Let me tell you the genealogy of 2 people, okay? One guy, his name is Max Jukes. He was a very famous atheist back in the 1800s. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not bashing atheists, okay? I love atheists. They're also in the image of God. Okay, they just have a wrong mindset. At least I believe it's a wrong mindset. But I love them, okay? So don't think I'm bashing. I'm not, okay? That if I was bashing, that would be me not being in the image of God, okay? So let's look at Max Jukes, okay? He's one man, very severe atheist. He was violent. He was a bit vitriolic against God. Okay, he was very, very violent against God. Max Jukes has 540 descendants. So people who have directly come from him, right? 310 of them were beggars. Okay? 150 of them were criminals. 7 were murderers. 100 of them were known to be very famous drunks. Okay? Half of the women were sold into prostitution, or they sold themselves. You can't point a finger at a prostitute. You know, there's my boss at work, she runs a ministry called After Hours, ministering towards the women who, it's a profession, it's the world's oldest profession, but that's their job, right? And you don't point fingers at prostitutes. But half of the women were in prostitution, and they cost a total of $1.25 million to the state, right, to the government. Do you see the flow of one man? You can't say it's all his fault, because every generation makes their own choices. But it's a legacy. Compared to him, you look at the same guy named Jonathan Edwards, who actually lived at the same time as Max Jukes. Jonathan Edwards, you guys might know, he actually preached a very severe message, hell and fire, brimstone, right? Go believe Jesus and you all go to hell. It's a message that I don't quite jive with, because I generally don't believe that's the message of God. If fear is the only reason why you should believe Jesus, then I don't think it's a good reason. But anyway, he was a godly man. I've read some of his works. He's incredibly godly. He has 1,400 descendants. Okay, that's about 3 times more. Okay, 295 were college graduates, which doesn't say much, I know, right? 80 were public officials, 30 were judges, 100 were lawyers, 60 were doctors, 100 were preachers and missionaries, 65 were college professors, 13 were college presidents, and there was 1 vice president of the United States. See, this is a legacy that we're leaving. You know, when I look at my life, the reason I stand here and can say these things to you is because my mother left a legacy in me, right? All I saw every day waking up, 4 o'clock, my mom would be on her knees praying for 2 hours from 4 to 6 for the salvation of my dad and for the salvation of my brother. I have 2 older brothers, right? My mom, she would get on she couldn't drive because both arms dislocate very easily. And, you know, if your arm dislocates while you're driving, it's bad news, right? And so she would have to take the bus. LA bus transportation is like the worst in the world. It's just junky, it's terrible. People get mugged on the bus. So my mom got mugged a couple times on the bus. You know, and when she would be waiting at the bus stop, she realized, it's such a waste of time just sitting here doing nothing. So then she started carrying Bible tracts. So that whenever she's sitting at the bus, whoever's walking by, she'd hand them a tract. She'd always carry an English one and a Spanish one, right? And she didn't know how to say anything except Jesus loves you, and Jesus te ama, right, in Spanish. She would get on the bus, and then she would go up and down the aisles to everybody sitting on the bus and hand out a tract, all right? My mom would sometimes meet people on the bus, had no clue who they were. They didn't have lunch that day, so she would give her lunch, right? This is a legacy. It's just very simple, small choices of everyday living, not the big things. Everybody always wants to focus on Abraham sacrificing Isaac, but it's the little things that built up to that one big moment of faith, right? All we want is the big stuff, right? Save Africa. Well, to save Africa, you've got to save 1 person in a tribe, right? It's the small things. It's the little things. And in that little things, all those little things, this is why the Benedictine monks said, treat your cup right. Treat your table right. Treat your clothes right. Treat your phone right. Because these are all things that we offer to God at the altar, right? It's a holistic understanding. It's a very embodied understanding of Christianity, not the Gnostic view. You don't know how many times I'm going to push against the Gnostic view, because there's a lot of Gnosticism in churches, right? So what is the legacy you leave? Because you are leaving one. Whether you like it or not, right? You're all leaving a legacy. Yeah? I look at Yosua, and I know that he's a legacy of Yo, right? Literal legacy. So, after this incredible genealogy, the repeated word, when you're in SBS, one of the things that they ask you to look for is repeated phrases, repeated words. What's the repeated phrase? He died, he died, he died, he died. Die, die, die. Everybody die. All right? This is the truth. You will all die one day. Okay? I didn't viscerally feel this until I saw my mom dying. I was with her at the very last moment, right? Spent an entire year within the hospital trying to save her life, but I couldn't. She died, all right? So everyone dies. You will die too. Even though right now you might think you're going to live a really long time. They say that the years go by fast. It's the days that move slow. Okay? The years will go by. All right? And you will be 60 in no time. I guarantee it, okay? I'm 41 right now, and I'm only 19 years away from 60. So, if you read my Bible, it says, chapter 6, verse 1. It says the title is, Increasing Corruption on Earth. Do you see? What are we made to do? We are made to multiply. We will multiply. Okay? We're kind of like rabbits in that sense. So let's read chapter 6, verse 1. This is going to be one of the most mysterious and puzzling verses in all of the Bible. Okay? This, and then also another passage in Exodus where his wife has to circumcise their son. It's a very mysterious passage, okay? So let me read it from my text so you guys don't have to read your book, just listen to me. It says this. When man began to multiply on the face of the land and daughters were born to them, the sons of God, the Hebrew word is B'nai Ha-Elohim, or Elohim, saw that the daughters of man, interesting, were attractive. So the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were beautiful. And they took as their wives as they chose. Then the Lord said, My spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. Then it says, verse 4, the Nephilim, let me show you, my computer's slow because it's really old. Oh, next. Or did it just freeze? It just wants you to stay in Romans. Oh, what's up with my computer? Let's let it just sit for a little bit. Poor thing. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men of old. So there he is. Wow. The Nephilim, right? Okay. I'm going to give you 3 options for the Nephilim. Oh, not the Nephilim. The sons of God. Okay? And you decide for yourself what you like. Because you can't go wrong all 3 ways. Because nobody really knows. Okay? And this isn't going to change your theology on God. So it's okay. You can freely choose who the B'nai Ha-Elohim are. First one is this figure right here, okay? B'nai Ha-Elohim, the only time that word is used, not only time, many times when that word is used, it actually speaks of angels. So when you read Psalms, sometimes when it says, the B'nai Ha-Elohim of God will praise him, right? So the story is basically that fallen angels came to earth, the sons of God, came to earth to the daughters of men. Makes sense, right? And they took whoever they wanted. You're beautiful. I'm going to take you. You're beautiful. And the ancient world believed that their children that they had were the Nephilim. Or that's why it says in verse 4, right? The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, right? They're also called the sons of Anak. So ancient mythology, this is actually Jewish mythology as well, says that these giants, they're half-breeds, half angel, half human, actually taught humanity medicine, gave them fire, right? And they were beastly. They just dominated the world. And this is one of the reasons some people believe that God actually had to send a flood, is to wipe out the Nephilim, right? Now you're like, that's crazy. Until you realize who actually followed this was the early church fathers. People like Irenaeus. Irenaeus was a direct disciple of John the Baptist, John the Apostle. Okay? So the early church fathers actually believed that the B'nai Ha-Elohim was fallen angels. Now you can do with that what you like. I have a whole theory on it. If you ever want to hear it, I will share it with you. I think the other one might be a little bit more palatable for you guys. That was just a verse on. Okay, so this is a Greek mythology, Zeus and Persephone. Okay, here we go. The Bnei Elohim were the sons, this is the second theory. Bnei Elohim are the sons of Seth. Remember, Seth was the righteous son. His children began to call on the name of the Lord. You probably read that in Genesis. And the unrighteous, the sons of God, are actually the sons of Cain. Now you say, why sons of God? Because Cain is the firstborn. And so it was a conflict of Cain's children and Seth's children, the righteous with the unrighteous joining in marriage and creating all sorts of havoc. Okay, so that's theory 2. Okay? Third theory is emperor worship. Now, who was often called the son of God in ancient religions and ancient economies? The kings. That's why if you saw 300, who saw 300? King Artaxerxes, the most disgusting figure, even his cheeks are pierced, right? What does he call himself? I am a son of God. Once you get into Roman times, what did the Roman emperors eventually do? You'll study this a lot when you get to New Testament. It was emperor worship. I am a son of God. What did Pharaoh call himself? I am Ra, the god Ra incarnate. I am a son of God. And so basically this third theory says, most people kind of jive with this one. Third theory says that the kings, they grew so much in power, began to dominate people and were able to take whatever wife they wanted. And they began to put violence on the earth because they kept imposing themselves onto creation and to human beings. Those are your 3 theories. You can run with it. Okay? Can't go wrong. Just don't think you're a Nephilim or something. Then you've really gone wrong. Okay, the main point. The main point of this, okay, well, whether they're the son of God, they're fallen angels, the son of Seth and Cain, the main point is verse 5 of chapter 6. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. I mean, how many more times can you repeat yourself, right? Saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Now, in the paradigm of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, what is only evil continually? Right? It's just this constant projection of me. Me, what I want. And that's exactly what the pyramid is. It's what the pharaoh wants that dominates the rest of the country, the pyramid, right? That's why the pyramid was such an important thing to them, right? You guys are fading a little, and I only have 10 minutes. So, it says that God says to Noah, I'm giving you guys a condensed version so I can actually finish this today, okay? So he says to Noah, I'm sending a flood. Now remember, they have never seen a flood. It says that a mist used to come up from the ground and water the plants. So for them, for Noah to think, what, flood, water? I'm assuming, okay? Maybe there were floods, right? Again, it's argument in silence. And so God says, I'm going to send a flood, and I want you to build this ark. Who's ever seen Evan Almighty? Yeah. Such a good movie. You know, there's such good theology in there. Man, every time I watch that movie, I just cry my eyes out. So good. So good. Evan, you're so... Okay, anyway. So God says, I'm going to send a flood. I'm going to wipe out the earth. You are the only person that I see righteous. Now, when you study the Hebrew, sorry, I keep talking about Hebrew, but it's important, right? This is originally written in Hebrew. The Hebrew word for righteousness is actually, according to Ellen Davis, it means rightness. What that also means is rightly ordered. A person is righteous if their desires are rightly ordered, right? So when Noah is righteous, it's not because he's perfect, because something in him is just rightly ordered. He recognizes God, he recognizes himself, he's righteous, right? And so then God says, I'm going to wipe out the earth. Now, a lot of us in this room are like, how is that even fair? Like, you didn't even give them a chance, right? I think he did. Because how long does it take Noah to build that ark? 100. Yes. That's how long God gives them a chance. And that ark is a physical symbol that God is coming. Every day, every nail that Noah puts into the ark Something's going to happen. How embarrassed must he have felt, right? That's what I got from the movie Evan Almighty. He must have been so embarrassed. Right? And because the New Testament says that all the people were doing were eating and drinking and getting married. Right? Every day, Noah's putting one more nail into the ark. Faithfully does it. I'm sure he complained along the way. You know, we often talk about justice. This is a very, very, very special word. It's a very dangerous kind of a word. It can become kind of entitlement, right? What I mean by that is, God give us justice. You know, justice against those bad people, and justice against that bad person for that bad choice. And I want justice. Okay? Now, what I'm going to propose to you is that we should seek justice for the poor, the marginalized, the weak. Not so much the poor, the weak and the marginalized, right? Unfortunately, in our world, being poor is being weak, which is kind of sad. That's why YWAM is a very different paradigm. None of us have money, and it's awesome. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, money doesn't control us. Money doesn't control the decisions I make, but that is not the paradigm of the world. Money controls every decision you make. Where you live, what car you drive, who your friends are. It's money. And YWAM is like, woo, no money! Yeah! I know it can be hard. It's painful, I know. You'll study that when you get to Deuteronomy. But you know, when we ask for justice, do you know what perfect justice is? Let's talk about the purity. Let's talk about pure justice. What is pure justice? Pure justice means that the moment you do something bad, you get punished that very moment. That's pure justice. The moment you hate your brother in your heart, what does Jesus say? You've murdered them. And what is pure justice? Whack. Right? You get struck down. You gotta die, life for life. Eye for eye, tooth for tooth, right? That's pure justice. What should we often be seeking? Grace. Have mercy. Have mercy on me. Now, this is a really, really, really hard word, especially for people who have been abused, who've seen violence. Right? I grew up in a very violent family, right? Where do you think I saw the blood? Blood. Right? Did you ever see the video with the little kid, Blood? Yeah, she's so cute. Blood. Jug of blood, right? You've never seen the video? Look up Blood Kid. It's really cute. YouTube it. Not now, though. Right? This is what we seek. See, the justice of God is, that's why God doesn't wield justice, right? Rampantly. Africa, war, kill, right? There's a very fine balance. So when you are looking at someone and you want justice, remember, first, we seek grace, right? We seek grace. And we give justice with a very, very, very heavy, steep dose of humility, right? That's how justice should be given, not just with a weapon, right? Sometimes we use the gospel as a weapon. I want to cut people down. You're going to hell. You're all going to burn in hell, right? It has to be used with a very grave level of humility and grace. So Noah gets into this ark. There are a lot of ancient Near East texts on the flood, very similar. But the portion that's very different about the Noahic flood is the covenant that God makes with man, right? The word this word covenant is going to be one of the greatest words throughout all of the Old Testament and the New. Covenant. It means God is saying, I bind myself to you. I bind myself to you. Regardless of sin, regardless of your dumb choices, regardless of whether you reflect me or not, I bind myself to you. It's not an emotion. What is it? It's a choice. It's God's choice. And the word that you'll often see reflected with covenant is remember. I will remember. I won't forget. Right? So God establishes covenant, and the way that he does it is through blood. Blood. Blood carries life. And it's always life for life. It's always life for life. And we'll see this in Abraham, But covenant always has to be made with blood. That's why Jesus shed his blood. What is he doing? He's making covenant. He's making covenant with you and me. Right? Showing, I bind myself to you. You are mine and I'm yours. Right? It's the covenant of the blood. I think it's amazing. And that's where the command says, you shall not eat meat with blood. Right? Respect the life that was taken. That's why the Jews have very, very strict kosher food laws. They will only kill their animals in a really humane way, where the animal will suffer the least amount of death. See, we don't actually know where our food comes from. You've only seen chicken breasts on a chicken platter that's already been cut and sliced and skinned and defeathered, right? We don't know where our food comes from. We don't know how it's been killed. This is not the... Now I totally am something like a tree hugger, man. But I am. Now I eat a lot of organics just because I've seen the cruelty that animals have been treated with just to feed us. And God says, respect life. If you're going to take an animal, to kill it, if you're going to take a human life, respect the life. Right? It's my image. It's my image bleeding out, right? I was going to talk a little bit about God's memory, because that's a really weird phrase, right? Like, how can God forget? But I will actually do that a different time. Let me do that in probably tomorrow or the day after. It's a very important phrase that God remembers. Whew. We went through 3 hours together. Good job, you guys.